Hey party people, Tony Rowe here, back with another rapid game. It's been a while. I do apologize for that. I have been pretty busy with fiance coming to town, and work has got me pretty beat. Social obligations. Please don't play the exchange. Yes. Please don't play the exchange, and then I exchange on e4 myself. Okay, so we're going to get a Ruby, or a Rubinstein, for those of you who are maybe less familiar with moderately obscure variations of the French. Black's idea, of course, in the Rubinstein is to basically trade the d-pawn for the e-pawn, and then your c-pawn for their d-pawn. So you're going to trade a non-center pawn for a center pawn, like so. And long term, you'll have a very compact structure with an extra center pawn that you can try and hope to exploit in the endgame. Sometimes black manages to nab the two bishops too. Of course, one issue is that this bishop, as is customary in the French, is fairly suck, and so you have to find something to do with that. A lot of times you go b6, bishop b7. Bishop g5 is not a move I'm super familiar with. h6 would be relatively thematic. Then he could go knight takes f6, knight takes f6, and then either bishop e3 or bishop h4. The only other move that's really calling out to me, well, bishop e7 I guess is kind of a candidate move, but I'm sort of thinking about just I guess h6 he can play bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, and then like d takes c5. I don't know if that's actually a big deal or not. My instinct is telling me that c takes d4 is perhaps correct. So c takes d4, knight takes d4. It's also like queen b6, queen a5 check. I have an irritatingly large number of candidate moves. Usually after bishop d3, the main moves I think are bishop d3, c5. The main moves are knight takes f6, d takes c5. What else? I don't know. Okay, I'll play c takes d4. Knight takes d4, I will have to figure out what to do. I think I'll probably just play bishop e7. Keep it solid. William Jameson. I see. Do I take with the g-pawn? Like a total psychopath. G takes, knight takes. It seems unnecessary, but also against someone who's 250 points lower rated than me, 270 points lower rated than me, it's at least moderately enticing to imbalance the play a little bit. Grab the two bishops, grab the central presence. I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm a little bit more enticed by g takes f6 because knight takes f6, knight takes f6. I think I have to play g takes f6 anyway. If queen takes f6, bishop b5 check, and my king is just a total wreck. So, okay, if I'm going to play g takes f6, I'd rather not trade pieces. I'm going to play f5 at some point, and I'd rather have his knight on e4 than to trade his knight for this knight, because now f5 will gain me a move. So we're going to take with the g-pawn, and things are already getting kind of real. This is a relatively common kingside structure for black in the Rubinstein, so no real fear there, at least at the moment. Black has the two bishops. Black obviously has an extra center pawn, and this g-pawn that's turned into an f-pawn is quite useful in the center as well. Okay, bishop g7, knight d6. So that's a non-starter. I could be real cagey and just go bishop e7. If bishop e7, though, I'm a little bit nervous about queen h5. So he'd be threatening knight takes e6 to start, but also something like bishop e7, queen h5 castles, I think, is just losing a knight f6 check. So it's starting to look like f5 is the answer. Knight e5, bishop b5 check. Yeah, that looks a little scary. Ugh. Bishop g7, knight d6. Okay. So I'm going to play f5 and kick the knight back. I assume he's going to go to one of these two squares, and then I'm probably going to go bishop g7. Though maybe bishop e7. If he goes knight g3, bishop g7 might be always sort of loose to knight h5 nonsense. Of course, after knight g3, bishop g7, I'm hitting his knight, so he can't go knight h5 right away, but it's possible he might want to do that in the future. Okay, so now do I go bishop e7 or bishop g7? Bishop g7 is obviously a lot more active. It's a little bit better defender of my king as well. On g7, it allows h6, which might be necessary at some point, and of course it just blocks the g file. So bishop g7, c3 castles. How does that look? Is knight takes f5 possible? Probably not. That's about as conclusive as I get. I actually wasn't planning on recording tonight just because I wanted to take it easy, but I realized I haven't put out a real video in quite a long time, and also I was going to take a walk to the grocery store and just pick up some random stuff that I needed. I got 20 steps out and it just started raining on me, so I took that as an omen that maybe I should do something more productive inside. So here we are. Shout out to Boss Potato and Lucas, both members of the Lee Chess team. There's like some bug, I think, where I don't know why my spectator, it shows 4 spectators and 3 people. Boss Potato and Lucas combined are maybe like 3 players. Knight moves. Shout out to Knight moves. He observes my games a lot. He's a glutton for punishment. This thing is kind of dumb. Of course, this thing is always dumb. But, I mean, for the structural weaknesses that black has incurred, I sort of like black's position. I'll get it out eventually. This bishop is very strong. White, of course, has... black has more central control. Maybe b6 and bishop b7, and then... Man, look at these beasts. Yeah, what time is it? It's 7:11 Tony time, which means it's like really late French time. Go to bed, Lucas. So William Jameson, dipping into quite a think here. Don't blame him, it's a complicated position. If knight b5, what am I doing? It's a pretty legitimate question, actually. Since knight d6 is a threat. I mean, if I castle, do I really care that he gets to go knight d6? Not sure. Maybe then just queen c7. Uh-huh. So he says take this, he's saying. I wonder if he's just going to go super deep. After bishop takes b2, he'll go castles. Bishop takes a1, queen takes a1. That actually looks pretty decent. But queen f6 there? Can I be like really rude and just take everything? takes queen f6. I mean, it's certainly risky, like this variation with queen f6. I would assume he can't trade queens. He'd have to go something like queen e1, queen c1 would probably be the most natural squares. And then I castle. I mean, that's a line. If he goes bishop takes b1, rook b1, I mean bishop c3 check. He probably has to go knight d2. Something like king e2 or king f1 has to be completely unplayable. I have to imagine black is better there, although again, pretty complex. But I feel like this might not be the most practical move, or maybe, I mean, I'm sure a lot of humans would play bishop takes b2, but this is certainly a little bit ambitious. But I'm hoping essentially that I can just take this pawn and soak up the pressure for a while and be up a pawn with all of the static advantages that I already have here. We'll see. I don't think rook b1, bishop c3, knight d2 is a great way to start white's initiative. So I think he's sort of pot committed on a practical level to go castles. Bishop takes a1, queen takes a1, queen f6, and then he has to decide where he wants his queen to go, because certainly queen takes f6 is not going to happen. So we'll see. Whoops. I have not, by the way, picked a winner for the book giveaway yet. The entries have pretty much stopped. Every once in a while, like one will pop up in my inbox, so I think maybe tomorrow I'll pick a winner. So if you guys have not gotten it, if you have not subbed, liked the video, written your comment, etc., get in there, because time is very limited, probably within the next day or two. I'm picking a winner, and that book is going out. And once it hits the U.S. Post Office, buddy, light speed. No, I'm just kidding. I like this guy. He thinks a lot. Makes me look quick. 2391. This might be my all-time high classical rating. I did try and record a game a couple days ago, and probably 3 or 4 days ago, and I was plagued by the Lichess Reconnect tragedy. Whoa. That is deep. I don't believe it. Okay, I'm just going to take this and play queen f6 again. I think h4 is substantially less useful than castles, so I'm happy to go down the same line with him having h4 in instead of castling. I'm cool with it. I mean, he has to play something like queen c1, but I think I can probably even castle. I'm not sure I have to be all that scared of what he's got going on, but it might be prudent for me to just go b6, bishop b7 first, leave my king in the center for a hot second. Maybe I should go knight c5 and try and encourage bishop b5 check, bishop g7, d7, bishop takes d7, knight takes d7 when I got rid of my crap bishop. c3 doesn't seem very good. Is there a huge downside to knight c5? I could go knight e5 and try to trade off a piece, but I think he's just going to go bishop e2 in either case. Yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm not scared of bishop b5 check at all. I'd be happy, in fact, as I'm probably going to play bishop d7 on the next move regardless, so... So I'm up an exchange and a pawn. I sort of have to I have to kind of mentally change from, okay, I'm trying to objectively reach a winning position, to, okay, I am objectively winning, almost certainly, and how do I minimize my losing chances, and how do I close out this game in sort of the most economical and precise fashion. So I think it's kind of useful during your opponent's turns to think about those high level sort of issues. That's kind of an annoying move. I guess I have queen h6. Probably the only good move, so I'm just going to play it. Obviously, if something like queen e7, he would play knight g7 check, and then my king gets all bunked up, and I'm not into that. But yeah, I was saying I've heard from, in many different articles from many different strong players, that a lot of times that because you don't know what move your opponent's going to play, a lot of times if you're calculating during your opponent's time, like a lot of that time is wasted just by, you have to basically predict your opponent's move. Really? Oh, he's hitting my rook. I was like, what the hell does that do? Okay. Now it makes more sense. He's not just hanging this. I get it. Okay, castle's long, probably. Just connect z rooks. I think my king is safe enough on c8/b8. Okay. Probably I'll put it on a8 if I get a chance. Because at some point this might be annoying. But yeah, so during my opponent's turn, I think it's a good idea to sort of think about high-level strategic stuff. In this case, I think a lot of the high-level strategic stuff is sort of overwhelmed by the fact that I'm up by 3 points of material. You don't really need to think a ton about, tiny positional imbalances when you're up like a knight. You just have to sort of go into full-blown conversion mode. So that's what I'm thinking about now. How do I minimize my losing chances and minimize my opponent's counter chances and just close this out? Of course, they're going to sort of do the death spasms here and try every scam and trick known to man to kind of wamboozle you out of the win here. So this is kind of the time where you have to be the most careful. Okay. I have knight d3 check. Or takes knight d3 check. I kind of like the idea of that. Probably takes first. Is just the easiest. Knight d3 check. He probably will go king f1 or king e2. And I think I'll probably just play king b8 in that position. That way, after queen e5 or something, I can just go to king a8 and my king is totally safe here. Okay, so I'm going to play that. I'm not going to think too long about it. This seems pretty conclusive. If you've watched the other 48 rapid games on my channel, I get into time trouble relatively frequently, especially in the technical phases where I'm just kind of winning, and I should close it out, but a lot of times I allow it to be a little bit murkier, a little bit more murky than I should because I don't have a lot of time. So in this case, I see a pretty practical winning option, and I'm just going to go for it. This thing's kind of humorous. It has no escape squares. He self trapped his knight here. That's that's unfortunate. So his queen has to stay along this diagonal as long as my queen is attacking this thing. That's unfortunate. Yeah, let's just do this. Oh, I had queen c1. Dang. Yeah, queen c1 was better. For sure. That's a bummer. Yeah, that was an easier win, for sure. b6. Yeah, see, he's going into the wriggle here. Trying everything to rip open my king shelter, which he should. This is all fine. Yes, my phone is running out of battery. I got real into ebooks or audiobooks recently. Kind of obsessed with them. I listen to them all day at work, and so by the time I get home from work at like 7 o'clock, my phone is completely trashed. So queen c1 is still possible. I'm just deciding whether or not I want to be really greedy and just take that thing first. I kind of do. I'm just going to take this first. If I go queen c1 check, he can take, and then take on a7. I'm just gonna bag another pawn first. I mean, the threat of queen c1 is pretty serious, and it's not actually that easy for him to get out of it. He still has to this knight can't move, and he still has to protect this knight. And actually, all of these squares are not possible for his queen to move to avoid queen c1 check. So I don't see how he actually. I guess he has king e2. That would be the only really practical chance to avoid the queen trade. It's a pretty ugly chess move, though, especially because 2 moves ago he played king f1 instead of king e2. Oh, he's got tricks. He's got some stuff. Well, touche. Touche, pal. All right, do I have to go king a7? It's kind of annoying. Rook d7, queen takes h8 check, king a7. I mean, that's probably actually playable and much better for black also. I don't think I need to do that. So if I go here and he goes, yeah, what does he even do? I mean, queen b2 obviously is impossible. Queen d4, I guess, is an idea, isn't it? Queen d4. So king a7, queen d4 check is probably his idea. So king a7, queen d4, rook takes d7, queen takes d7, queen c1 check, king e2, knight f4, mate. So that's quite nice. There's also king a7, queen d4, rook takes d7, queen a4 check, king b8. Yeah, queen d7 I think is the same though, right? Queen c1 check. Yeah. Is there anything else after king a7? I mean, I suppose he does have alternatives too. Yeah, it's tricky though. I mean, of course, rook takes d7 is still kind after king a7. If he doesn't play queen takes d4, it's still kind of a. Wait, hold on. Wait. Okay, yeah, king a7. So let's go. I'm kind of double checking here, second guessing myself. The thing that's kind of interesting about king a7 is that it's kind of an attempt to improve upon rook takes d7 immediately. So rook takes d7, queen takes h8, king a7, and then I still have the same threats: queen c1 check, king e2, knight f4 mate. But he has a move to react to it, and so I can play king a7 here immediately, and then he has to react to the threat of rook takes d7, queen takes h8. Now it's not check, and I have queen c1, which mates in 2 anyway. So he has to find a move that stops that, which is kind of, I don't know, it's an interesting finesse. Okay, I mean, what am I really thinking about here? I'm not going to just sack the exchange. But an interesting moment. I mean, one thing I think, I actually really want to make a video on this. It's so important in just as a technique of calculation to check different move orders of the same idea. And it's like something that when I was 1700 I didn't understand at all, and I sort of picked up as I kind of improved and got better. I realized a lot of tactical ideas work once you switch the move order around a little bit. So okay, what the heck is this? Obviously, this is kind of an issue. My first thought is rook takes d7, queen takes h8, and then f6. And moving the knight gets him checkmated, so he'd be in some stuff there. He might not get checkmated there, because now he has the f3 square. So rook d7, queen takes h8, f6. Knight e6 check, or not check, dummy. I mean, that still has to be good for me, right? Queen d2, and I'm just smacking him upside the head. I mean, queen c1 check wins a rook also. It's just whether or not my king is safe enough to not. I don't want to get back the exchange, but so if rook takes d7, queen takes h8, f6, like something like queen c8, queen e8, queen e8, rook d5, let's say. All right. Let's do that. I've successfully thought myself. I don't know why I thought knight f7 was possible here, so that's cool. Yeah, this is a tough position. The important, I didn't explain this before, the important part is that knight h7 or queen h7 is not possible because of rook takes h7. Yeah, I thought about this move. Rook d5, queen e6, no. Maybe knight f4 there. Actually, coincidentally threatening mate. That's kind of sweet, actually. All right, I don't have much time. He's making it complicated, and I don't think I'm doing that great of a job. I went on this whole, soliloquy about preventing counterplay and just crushing your opponent mercilessly when you're up material, and I've successfully lost 2 points of material, messed up my king. I have all kinds of pawns hanging. My pieces are everywhere, completely uncoordinated, yeah, I've made a mess of it and thought myself down to a minute, as I usually do. So, thumbs up to chess improvement. Nice. Hopefully this works. I've been studying this endgame lately. I'm going to make a video out of it. I'm just trying to, similar to how I sort of compressed the outside rook pawn on the 6th and 7th rank videos down into something where I kind of build it up from the simplest case to the hardest case. I'm trying to do the same thing for this ending. I'm looking at 4 versus 3, all on one side. Single rook ending, 4 versus 3, all on one side. What makes a winning case? What makes a drawn case? How do you draw as black? How do you push for a win as white, etc. But I don't feel like I have as good of a handle as I need to teach it, and also I'm trying to come up with some kind of the key factors and the key facets that make it good for white or drawn or whatever. So that will come out eventually. I just have to figure out all the specifics, but I'm having a good time studying that ending. It's kind of fascinating. There's a famous Capablanca game. I think it's Capablanca Yates. Don't hold me to that, though. Where he manages to win. Not easy, of course. If you want to get yourself prepared for that video, you should probably study the Lucena position and the Philidor position. It's not Lucena, is it? I say Lucena because that's how an Italian would pronounce it, and I'm just used to saying it that way, but I think it's actually Luthena, because it's Castilian Spanish, I think it is. I think it's Luthena, but also don't hold me to that, you know. I'm a typically ignorant American when it comes to European things, so. But I you know, do your research, come back and talk to me about it. We'll chat. We'll chat about the pronunciation of Lucena, Lucena, Luthena. I wish it was Lucena. I know that's 100% wrong. So what is he actually doing after Queen D2? Does this not completely end matters outright? Also, is Queen C1, King E2, Knight F4 check, King F3, Rook D3 just mate? Ah, Knight F4 check is not possible. Queen D2 check. The thing is, he doesn't even have any checks. What are you getting at here, pal? I guess King G1 is the only move. That looks horrendous. Oh, Queen C1 check, he's just going to take it. Okay. Visualization. Very strong today. Probably if he goes King G1, I'm going to take check, King H2. And then Knight F4. Knight takes F. I'm threatening mate, and I'm hitting the knight. I would assume he would take it, takes, check. Actually, he probably can't take it. He's getting checkmated after that. So he would have to just play something like Rook G1. Maybe I'd play Rook D2 there. Just add another attacker. Yeah, that's the only move. I don't know that the Queen takes F2 is actually best. I don't have a lot of time to think about this kind of thing. On Rook G1, I actually have Rook D1, which is pretty slick. I want to play that just because it looks cool. My king is shockingly safe on this A7 square. Shout out to these pawns. Double B pawns, what's up? He takes it. But this looks bad. This guy coming in seems like grim death. Boop. All right, good game, William Jameson. I made it harder than I should have, but that's all right. You can swear, Fleal. For sure do it. What the hell is 11 hype? I'm like not... Like, hanging out with the Lichess people, they're a substantial portion are sort of younger than me by a little bit, and I just feel like the age gap is just like already unbelievably significant. I just feel old. But they keep me on top of my game. Yeah, so I've actually studied this game in quite some depth, and I think I did not play the technical phase well at all. I think that after the main line is castles here, and then black should go knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight f6, and then the critical move for white is bishop g5. Oh, shit. Excuse my French. Let's go into a study. I was looking for the annotation button, and there just wasn't one. YouTube games. Add a new chapter. They changed it. I love that green button, though. What the heck? I'm going to have to talk to Tebow about that one. I'm not sure I approve. I'm sure all kinds of dummies just didn't know how to add a chapter, but this is just unacceptable. I love that green button, man. I'm so sad. Okay. So historically, the main line here has been knight takes f6, knight takes f6, just getting rid of this knight. I mean, okay, if you didn't notice, black is starting to win a piece. So there's only really protect the piece, pin the knight, or offload the knight immediately. And historically, offloading the knight immediately and then putting your bishop on this very natural d3 square has been the best. But I think after c5, black has very few problems. There's d takes c5, takes, castles, castles, bishop g5, or queen e2. They're both usually amount to the same thing. And then black gets to go b6 and bishop b7. And in fact, it's kind of funny after bishop b7, rook a to d1, of course. Okay, let's make that red because it's pretty serious. Bishop takes h7 with this nasty discovery is a threat. And black realized that actually just allowing the double pawns is even best. Black has the two bishops and excuse me. Black has the two bishops, and I think with the reduced material, it's the weaker, slightly weaker king is not all that big of an issue. And queen f4 is actually a pretty awesome square defensively and offensively for central control. You can even see that Boris Gelfand was willing to play this position against Vishwanathan Anand in their world championship match. So, and I know, of course, Boris Gelfand is Jewish. There's like kind of a Rubinstein connection. He loved Rubinstein. I think it was one of his first books. So I'm sure to be able to play that in a world championship match was kind of like a nice tribute. But after bishop d3 instead, c5, white's idea is that after castles, takes here, he can play bishop g5 immediately and keep this bishop on the e4 square instead of the d3 square. So in the other line, you can see, oh, I don't know, about here, this bishop is on the d3 square. And it might seem like, why would I want my bishop on the e4 square instead? Well, as we saw on this line, there isn't many chances for white whipping up a kingside attack, and so the bishop on d3 doesn't do a ton. But in this position, with white being able to play bishop g5, something like c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop e7, white can retreat to the f3 square with the bishop instead, now that the knight's not there, and bishop g5 has gained him the necessary tempi to put this bishop on the f3 square. And, of course, this square is quite a bit more annoying for black. b6, bishop b7 is obviously impossible. And something like bishop d7 in a lot of cases will just hang the pawn. So this position tends to be a little bit more tricky. Black should castle, and then there are three moves here. Rook e1, queen d7, and c3. I won't get into a huge amount of detail here, but I do think this position is kind of cool in that all of white's responses have like a slight downside that black is able to exploit. So if given the chance, black would usually do one of two things. Of course, now that b6 and bishop b7 is impossible, black has to find a way to activate this bishop, and one great way to do that is to utilize this extra central pawn and go e5 and unlock this bishop, and also just kick this good knight out and gain some space in the center, etc. So e5 and maybe like something like bishop e6 or rook b8, then bishop e6 is an idea. The second idea would just be to go something like queen b6, rook d8, pin the knight along the d file, and now that the b pawn is protected, you can go bishop d7, maybe bishop c6 or bishop e8, just getting out of the way, rook a to c8. And once black finishes his development, he should be fine here. So against c3, c3 does nothing to stop e5, and black can just go e5 immediately with a pretty good game, I think. One level higher in sophistication is rook e1, of course, stopping e5. But rook e1 sort of allows the second plan with queen b6, and rook d8 is kind of annoying. And I think after knight b3, there's like some stuff with a5, rook d8, queen e2. And either a5 immediately or bishop d7 first. And white goes like, I think you can go like a5 here. Maybe it's bishop d7 first. Bishop d7. Yeah, bishop d2, threatening this stupid move. And then bishop b4, c3, bishop e7, c4, like a5 or something is supposed to be equal for black. But anyway, the main point is that after rook e1, queen b6, it's hard actually to meet rook d8 and simple bishop d7, bishop e8, or bishop d7, bishop c6, whatever. And so white started to play this move queen d3. I hate that. Queen d3, which I think is the best move, just simply planning rook a to d1 with a very large lead in development and a lot of pressure along the open central files. And now e5 would be met by knight f5, which is not what black would want. You'd probably have to play bishop takes f5 or something, and that's quite ugly. The downside to this move is that I think bishop c5 is quite a nice equalizer, which a move prior doesn't do much of anything, but in this specific position, once the queen goes to d3, something like rook a to d1, let's make this red, something like rook a to d1, now e5, and knight f5 would be met by queen takes d3, and knight takes e7 check, there's nothing on e7 anymore. And oh, by the way, after knight b3, queen takes d3, rook takes d3 allows this fork. So the fact that the queen is on d3 now makes bishop c5 quite good. And if you're wondering, something like, I forgot to mention this, after bishop f3, c3 queen b6 can now be met by queen b3. And that's sort of like the significance of c3, and the idea behind c3 is that you can now meet this queen b6 move with queen b3, and something like queen takes b3, a takes b3 would just be like completely unplayable based on this massive lead in development and pressure against the queen side. This is extremely uncomfortable for black. And so against c3, black can go e5, and against rook e1, because c3 is not in, and white can't meet queen b3, queen b6 with queen b3. Queen b6 is good in this case. And queen d3, bishop c5 is quite possibly good, though you can see it hasn't been played very much. The normal way is queen c7, but we won't get into it. Just wanted to explain the sort of state of the theory in this line. And okay, so bishop g5. It's interesting to think about this move for a second. If it's not a main move, usually black has some easy way to kind of equalize here. I don't notice any top games by experts here. No one's played this against Georg Meyer, Beriev, or Pelletier. I wonder what I should play here. C takes d4 is the most natural move to me. I did think about queen b6 and queen a5, though. Problem with queen a5 is just bishop d2, and white gets that move for free. Okay, so queen c7. This looks okay. I'm somehow not sure. Knight f6, knight takes f6, d takes c5, bishop takes c5. So this is the same position as you typically get in the main line with knight takes f6 check and bishop d3, except black has queen c7 in and white has bishop d2. So castles, bishop e7. I don't like that. What happens after castles? Bishop can come to c3, but again, can black just play b6? Yeah, maybe knight g5 now. Interesting finesse that the bishop on this square does not block the knight coming from this square to this square, where in the other line where the bishop is on g5, white can't play this move. Interesting. I don't know. I'll have to look into this. I don't want to make any definite conclusions on queen a5 check before I look at it too long. Yeah, and as I was saying, something like knight takes, I think I have to play g takes f6 anyway, because queen takes f6, bishop d7 just looks unplayable to me. I mean, maybe I can do this, like Stockfish is saying I'm not losing or anything, but what kind of a psychopath would want to play this position? Something like this doesn't look all that pleasant. Stockfish even thinks black is better, but that's sort of... This is not a very human line. I think g takes f6 is more natural. And if I'm going to play g takes f6, I'd rather have these knights on board, as I said, because f5 will come with tempo and just seems logical. So all this is pretty natural. I think knight f3 is just kind of crap. I shouldn't say that. It's just not... It's not... I think this sacrifice is not a sound one. It's an interesting idea, and I think it's... If I didn't have queen f6, I think the sacrifice would be quite good, because overall, after these moves, white has pretty good compensation. I mean, like on some level, if queen f6 didn't completely halt the tempo of the attack and kind of turn the corner as far as the defense goes, the idea is sound. I mean, black obviously has a lot of problems with his king and a lot of problems on the dark squares, and knight h5 is coming, and white's pieces are relatively active and well placed. I think if white's going to play this idea, he should at least go castles and play this same way. But again, even after queen f6, I don't think c3 is the best way to stay active as white, because you're going to have to move your queen anyway. Like, once the pawn hits c3, where's this queen going now? So I think just playing something like queen c1 or queen e1 is better right away. But even so, I have a hard time believing that white has enough compensation for the rook and pawn here. Or the exchange and pawn, rather. Like, I would probably play b6. And just try and get on with my development, possibly going long. And I think black should be probably just winning. I don't really believe in it. I think after h4, this sacrifice is no doubt winning. I did bungle this pretty bad, though. Knight c5. All these moves seem close to forced. c4, castle's long, again, pretty much forced. Knight f6. All of these moves are really obvious, I think. Yeah, queen c1. This move is irritating to miss because, I mean, again, I went on this rant about stopping counterplay and ensuring a winning endgame, and when you're up in exchange and a pawn, trading queens is pretty much game set. So that's kind of an irritating miss, but I think that king b8 doesn't spoil much. Yeah, possibly around here. Maybe a takes b6 is just not the best move because of this knight d7 check thing, and it just gets kind of a little bit hairier than it should be here. If queen d4 again, I thought there was this rook d7 move. Apparently queen c1 first is better, but I looked at this and I think it's quite good. This gets white mated to this, as I said. But okay, I mean, if you have to move the queen, what else is there? So knight g5. Actually, practically, this is a good idea because it stops the trade of queens with queen c1, and again makes the position quite a bit messier. So my opponent did do a good job of trying to make things complicated. I mean, probably at around this point, he started to get a feeling like maybe he had done something wrong and this is objectively losing, and I think this plan is... Probably he should go king e2, by the way. But I think his plan is probably objectively, or practically speaking, the best way to make things a mess here. Knight g5, b6, etc. Takes here. f6. Yeah, knight f4 was probably curtains as well. Threatening rook d1 mate. Yeah, this looks pretty good. It's true. But f6 is forcing, and it's the first move that I saw. Sometimes in chess, the first move that you see is winning, but maybe not the best winning move, and you just play it anyway because if you see it first, it's winning. Yeah, and after this, it's just hard to... yeah, this move is better. The g4 and f4 squares are much better than trading off the knight on f4. True dat, but this looked practically very easy. I think that probably in this position, white should obviously not take on f4, should do something else, like rook g1, but... Oh. 2 threats, okay. I actually didn't see that. Full confession, did not even see queen h4 was a threat. So I could have just taken it here, huh? And then repeated the position without the h-pawn on the board. Probably I don't even have to do that, but God, I'm bad. Okay, and this is just, yeah, I mean, this is either my opponent didn't see something or he's just throwing himself on the sword. But okay, so what can we take away from that game? Well, hopefully you learned something about Rubinstein theory, whether or not you wanted to. And I think, again, I need to be a little bit more, what's the word? Precise technically, for sure, but also I need to work on my technique a little bit more, I think. I think because of all of my study of the opening and the associated middle games, I play the early middle game really well compared to what my rating is. Like, I don't think I'm an exceptional calculator. I think I'm about average as far as calculation goes for my rating, but I do think I play the opening and the early middle game pretty well, and that tends to get me a lot of good positions that aren't that hard to play for me, which is nice. But a lot of times once the game starts to devolve into something that does not resemble something that I'm familiar with, I play quite a bit worse. Like, I mean, okay, we're done with this. Let's go back to this game. The analysis board, check out the comp analysis. You can't really tell if I made any inaccuracies or blunders here, but you can see that, like, all the way through, I mean, I'm not even sure I would consider queen h6 dubious, but I mean, I was winning without really having to do much of any thinking or work. I mean, you can see the evaluation goes basically from a slight advantage to white, like you'd expect in the opening, to equal, to winning, to much more winning without almost any problems or any thinking. I mean, -6. And then, of course, it starts going to hell afterwards. So that's definitely something I can work on in chess, is being a little bit more precise in my technique, working on closing out those end games in the most precise fashion accurately, and doing it with a little bit more quickness. I wasted a lot of time in this end game as well after lecturing about not doing that, so that's definitely something I need to work on, and I think it's a good takeaway from this game, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have the same problems. It's easy to get, I mean, I'm the first one to admit that I study way too many openings. I just enjoy it. It's something that I do for fun, not even because, like, I want to improve. I just enjoy the scientific sort of process of investigating an opening, digging into it, creating a nice set of notes, keeping them updated, etc. It's just kind of fun for me. You know, I was a research scientist before, and I think that opening study with all the tools available and all that feels a lot like research, so I enjoy doing that, but of course that time could be better spent as far as my chess improvement goes on almost anything else. So, okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry for the delay. I will be back with more videos, and I will be announcing a winner for that book. So I will see you guys later. I don't know if I'll have more videos coming out before this weekend. Hopefully I'll get a couple done this weekend. So if I don't talk to you guys in the virtual sense until the weekend, finish out the week strong, and I will see you guys later. Bye.